Hello everybody, and welcome back to my sunroom on this beautiful day here in East Tennessee in April. I'm going to be doing a tutorial about growing Tolumnias today. My new passion about orchids these days is growing these smaller ones. And of course, I love my large and huge orchids that I've grown for so many years, but the smaller ones are taking my heart. My Tolumnias are my new loves. They're small, they're charming, and they're very easy to care for. And I found the blooms last a long time. As you see here, this is my Tolumnia Jairak Firm Butterfly, and she's been in bloom for 2.5 months. That's a long-lasting bloom. Now, for those of you who grow for fragrance, these are not fragrant, but they make up for the fragrance with lots of charm. These are known as equitant oncidiums, and they look just like an oncidium bloom on a very small, compact plant. They're native to the Caribbean, and they love warm, bright conditions. The ones I have are hybrids. They're not the species type. I've heard from some very talented growers that the species are harder to grow. So make sure that you know what you're buying before you place an order for these. Let's start with what I'm growing these in. Mine are growing in Spagmoss, something I've been growing my orchids in for many years with great success. And then I top the Spagmoss with small or medium-sized Orchiata bark so that it keeps the algae and the cyanobacteria from growing. These are in 3 or 4-inch clear orchid pots with the drainage holes in the bottom. And all these products are available at my sponsor's website, the Orchid Supply Store. And I will place a link in my description box to their website. Anything that you need to grow your orchids, your plants, they've got it. And also, when you place an order, if you'll use my coupon code, Amy, you will receive a 12% viewer's discount. Also, if you're in the continental United States, you get free shipping with every order. The reason I grow mine in Spagmoss is because the roots are very delicate. The nurseries that I've bought them from suggest that you grow them similarly to Cattleyas, with light conditions similar to a Phalaenopsis orchid. And these have grown great in moss, just like my Cattleyas. I wouldn't want to grow them in bark personally, because if the roots of these stick to bark, then they're going to be stuck to that bark forever. So if you decide that you want to try them in bark, if that's your medium of choice, I highly recommend to use the Orchiata, which is a very long-lasting hardwood bark. I top the moss with Orchiata for this reason. I won't be trying to pry the tiny little roots from bark, and that top layer of bark won't need to be removed when I go to repot it. It can just be added to. I also water these exactly like I do my Cattleyas. Actually, I care for these very much like I do my Cattleyas, except they need less light than a Cattleya. I water them when the moss is dry. You can tell from lifting a pot with moss in it when it's dry. If it's very lightweight, then it's time to water. This is the color of my moss when it's actually damp. I just watered this a few days ago. When it dries out, it's going to be a light beige color. Also, you lift them, you kind of get a mental note of what they weigh when you've just watered them, because you're going to be surprised at how much water moss absorbs, and it's also very heavy. So as it becomes lighter in weight, and as the moss changes in color back to that light beige color, then you know it's time to water. Also, remember that a blooming orchid requires watering more often than one that's not blooming. So especially when they're blooming or when it's a new plant, check them really often. In my environment, they dry out in a week or so. That's in 70 to 75 degree temperatures with a humidity of about 30 to 40% this time of the year. These don't require high humidity, but I've never really met an orchid that didn't like humidity if you offered it. If they're in low humidity, you're going to need to water them more often than if they're in a humid grow space. I don't use a humidifier around mine, and they stayed in my house all winter long with no extra humidity, and they did just fine. I fertilize these every other time I water, about twice a month. Moss retains nutrients, so fertilizing them at every other watering in moss is plenty. I'm fertilizing at about 200 to 250 parts per million. Right now, I'm using MSU fertilizer. I switched things up a little bit for now. So that's about 1/4 teaspoon per gallon of reverse osmosis water. No CalMag added. Now, when I run plain water through them, the week that I don't use the MSU fertilizer, I'll put a little bit of CalMag in that water. But any orchid fertilizer you're using, 200 to 225 parts per million is good for this time of the year for Tolumnias. I'm thinking that's pretty much going to be what I'm going to be fertilizing them at all year long. The roots of Tolumnias are really sensitive. It's the fragile part of the plant. So I don't want to use full strength fertilizer that might damage the roots. Also, I'm growing these in room temperatures, just 70 to 75 degrees. So I don't think they need any more than that. They're growing fine with just this amount. And the new growths, they're developing really well. As for light, I grow most of mine in the kitchen under an LED light for 12 hours. Some of them grow in front of an eastern facing window that my phals grow well in. So they like bright, indirect sun. If you have a window that gets bright morning sun and you have a sheer curtain up to it, it will do well in those conditions. The most sensitive part of the plant is the roots. So the best time of the year to repot is in the spring when new root tips appear. However, I repotted some of mine back in November when I bought some from Hausserman Orchids, and they did great, but they all had good root systems. If you get one that doesn't, it's going to take a while for that one to rebound. Both of the nurseries that I've bought Tolumnias from, I bought them from Hausserman, and I recently got some from Krull Smith. They have them growing in these plastic net pots, like 1-inch net pots, and they are challenging to extract from the net pots. I actually cut the bottom of the net pots to get the plant out. So I soaked the root system really well. And this is one of those times when you kind of carve out an hour or two. This is a lesson in patience. So what I suggest you do is just know that you're going to be into it for a while. If the thing just pops out of that basket, oh my goodness, that's wonderful. But only a few have happened like that. I've bought 8 of them, and I think 2 of them came out of the net pots really easy. And the other ones was, it was an experience. It's a lesson in patience. It's the hardest part, actually, of taking care of them. Once they're in a pot, once you've got them repotted, you're home free. And they don't need to be repotted for several years, just depending on how well you care for the moss by not overwatering and not over-fertilizing. And like any other sympodial, when the fans fill the pot and there's no longer any room for the new ones, then you're going to need to repot and possibly divide it with 3 fans per division, just like you would any other sympodial. As for temperatures, these are warm growers, very similar to a Phalaenopsis, and they do well with just average home temps. Warm growers typically like temperatures between 62 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 16 to 29 degrees Celsius. I wouldn't go under 62 degrees. Again, the roots are sensitive and you don't want to expose them to cooler temperatures and risk damaging the roots. So here again, that's where they're very similar to growing a Phalaenopsis. They do like the same type temperatures that Phalaenopsis orchids do. The good news is these don't need a temperature change or shorter day lengths or anything like that to trigger them to bloom like a Phalaenopsis. They can bloom whenever they want to, and they can also rebloom from secondary spikes too. I think that is so cool. So unless the spike turns brown, you don't cut the spike down. See right here, this is my cardinal bird, and it has a spike that just got through blooming, and it's not turned brown. So I'm hoping that it reblooms for me. So I think that is such an awesome aspect of this plant. Also, these little fans that you see, once they fill the pot, I think these are just so cute. Let's say that you have 6 or 7 or 8 fans. You can divide these into a new plant when you want to, but as you see, this one just has, well, 3 fans, and there's the new growth. So it's going to be really interesting to see how many fans they grow per year, because I really don't know. We'll have to just, this is one of the cool things about trying a new orchid. You learn as you grow. But these have done really well. They came from the nursery in really good condition, so that always sets you up for success. And several of you have asked me about how to control pests. We don't like that word, pests that chew on our orchids. Oh goodness, no. My advice is to be vigilant. Every day check your plants, especially your new ones. The reason why I'm not showing you all 8 of mine is they're in different stages of isolation. I've had these since November and they're pest-free, but I would not bring my new ones that I just bought last week out here into my sunroom. They have their own little isolation place in my den. What I do is I use Garden Safe Insecticidal Soap on my new plants. I suggest you go ahead and just buy a bottle of the concentrate instead of the bottle. Just buy the concentrate, and then you're going to have a lot of Garden Safe Insecticidal Soap. And when I first unbox a new plant, I'll spray the plant really well that first initial time that I take it out of the box. And then I spray the plant again every time I water for about a month or 2. I also isolate my new plants for a month or 2, more like 2, until I am certain there are no bugs. It's easier to deal with them when you've got, like, 1 or 2 plants that have a bug or 2 than to spread it to your whole collection. I've seen people, it just takes down their whole collection, and that's just sad. So I was told early on when I started growing orchids, just go ahead and isolate new plants for about 2 months. And this was from a grower who had been growing plants. He had been growing orchids and selling orchids for about 40 years. So I listened to that advice, and that has been helpful to me. If you know you have issues with the plant, you isolate it even longer. With halo LED lights, you can make an isolation spot practically anywhere in your house. So have some available, and be careful about placing new plants with established plants. That's going to make your all's lives so much easier. So what do you all think about the Tolumnias? I love them. They're really very easy to care for and grow. When you figure out what the rules are, anything, you can grow anything once you know what the rules are, right? And I really like the fact that they're so compact. I hope this gives you all some good information. Thanks to my subscriber and friend, Sarah Rossi, for this video idea. I hope this helps you, Sarah. She helped me out with some really good advice and information when I bought my Bellina. and I really appreciated her help. So here it is, the end of the video. This is a longer one than usual, but I've had a whole lot to say. So thanks for hanging out here in my sunroom with me today. I hope you all have enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Thank you all for watching. You all are just the best. I appreciate your all's friendship and your kind comments and your blessings to me so very much. And before I close, I'd love to say the blessing over you, your plants, and your families. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn His face towards you and give you peace. You all make it a wonderful day. We'll talk to you next time.